Good evening, everyone. It's time to start this evening's webinar or presentation called Lead Your Business Analysis Career with IIBA's BA Competency Model. Now is the time. I am your presenter today. My name is Deb Oliver, and I would just love to first thank Kenan for inviting me to present about the competency model and the way in which you can grow your BA career, as well as thank all of you for taking time out in your busy schedules to attend this evening's presentation. So just a bit about me. I am a business analyst. I currently hold the role of product manager with the BA Professional Development Group at IIBA. In 2013, I became certified as a business analysis professional, and I really do consider myself fortunate for working with an organization like IIBA, because something that I am really committed to is the recognition of the value business analysis brings to organizations. And I am very fortunate, very lucky to be able to work with the BA community to see that happen and work on providing practitioners with knowledge, tools, and resources to help them with their practice. So in terms of the audience, the presentation, who the presentation is meant for. So the one thing that I can say when I was preparing for this presentation is that I was thinking about, who is the most appropriate audience for this kind of presentation. And I was thinking in terms of the new BA, that BA that has just entered the BA space, or that mid-level practicing BA who's really busy working through what they have learned in terms of their skills and knowledge and being able to apply it on the job. And then that senior expert BA, that seasoned professional, what could they get out of this particular presentation? And what became very apparent to me as I was going through all of it was the fact that it is appropriate for every single level. And the reason being is that it's really not about your career level or where you are right now, where you see yourself going. It's really about, how you're actually going to think about your career to move it forward, continue to build on business analysis competency, and really deliver value in your organization. And when I thought about it that way, I thought it is something that is impactful or could be impactful for everyone. And it also reminds me of the story that I'm going to share with you, and you may have heard the story before, but it has to do with the way people actually think about certain things. So think about your career, think about the work that they do. So there is a traveler who happened upon 3 stonecutters. And the traveler approached the first stonecutter and said, "What are you doing?" And the stonecutter looked at the traveler and reminded me very, very much of the new BA. I am placing the stones down like I am told to do, like I know how to do, based on all the literature that I've read. The traveler says, "Okay," and moves to the second stonecutter and says, "What are you doing?" And the stonecutter looked at the traveler and said, "Well, I am a skilled stonecutter, and I am placing the stones in a way that is the most efficient as possible and the way that looks the best. I'm really honing my skill as a stonecutter, and it's really going to be impactful." And the stonecutter said, "Okay, that's fair," and goes to the third stonecutter and said, "What are you doing?" Well, that stonecutter looks at the traveler and says, "Well, I'm building a cathedral." And to me, and the reason the story really resonates, is the fact that it does show the progression in terms of the BA career from having limited knowledge and just doing as you know, and then honing your skill and becoming skilled at business analysis, and then really being that senior BA that has that vision that moves beyond just the task that you're doing, but the value that you're bringing to the organization. So what I hope when we go through this presentation together, that you start thinking about what your cathedral is. Is it, how do I move forward and become the best I can in my current position? Or is it, how do I move my career forward, and what are my possibilities 5 years out, 10 years out, 15 years out? So just something to think about as we go through. Okay, so in terms of the agenda, we're really focused right now on thinking about where you are in terms of your career, identifying your strengths as well as development opportunities to move you to the next practicing level. And with that, I'd like to spend time talking about the idea of the competency and how it can play an important role in the work that you do in advancing your career. And we'll also spend some time looking at the model components and going through the things that really make up the model, the core pieces, as well as the pieces that make it accessible for you. And then talk about growing your career, just some thoughts for you to consider as you think about how you want to grow your career. After the presentation, I'm open to answering any questions. So if you have any questions, please do place them in the question box. If we run out of time, because sometimes we do during presentations, I'll work with Kanan to get answers to those questions, and we'll send them to everyone that has attended the webinar tonight. So I hope that's a fair thing to be able to do, and that you're ready to go and work through growing your career. So what I always start out with in presentations, because I think it's very, very important to make sure that people have a common understanding of really important terminology. And for us, it is, what is business analysis? And we know as business analysts, we are responsible for identifying needs and solving problems. But the way we go about doing this is markedly different depending on our skill set. So depending on our knowledge, our skills, our abilities, our personal characteristics, and the expectations that we have or that organizations have for our skill set. So it's really important to think about what you do in business analysis, as well as what are the expectations for the level that you practice. And then I always go back to the definition again of business analysis. So if you remember in Babak Guide version 2, it was all about the business analyst or business analysis being about being a liaison among stakeholders to recommend solutions and to enable organizations to achieve its goals. But with Babak Guide version 3, that has evolved. And the game has actually stepped up for business analysis, because there is a recognized gap and need in business analysis skill set within organizations, and they're asking for business analysis to practice enabling change in organizations by defining those needs and recommending solutions that deliver value to stakeholders. That's the demand for our profession, and that's why we have to think about, what kind of capabilities do we have to meet that demand? How do we need to grow our skill set to meet that demand? So let's go through another definition. Let's talk about what a competency model is. And in order to get into what a competency model is, we have to talk about other definitions that are part of that concept. Competency. I mentioned a little while earlier about skills and knowledge, but it is the combination of skills and knowledge needed to perform a role and the key behaviors that contribute to the strong performance of that role. So what is it that you bring to the table to work effectively in that role, to perform effectively? And then that goes into performance competency. So it's more about thinking about the skills, ability, and knowledge and behaviors that you have, but really for the standard set for the job that you hold. So not thinking in terms of your actual job title, but more in terms of the level that you are in your career. So thinking about, for your career, are you expected to perform, if you're a junior business analyst, are you expected to perform like a senior business analyst? No. So really thinking about, here are the set of skills, here are the performance competencies we have, but what does it look like based on your career level? And then, of course, getting into the competency model. It's really the knowledge, skills, abilities, and personal characteristics that are required for a person to be successful in their job. And success means that they're performing the job effectively. Success for a business analyst means that they're delivering value to their organization. And what is the most effective part about a competency model or characteristic? is that you have success indicators. So you know what your job performance looks like to perform it effectively. And you know that because you have indicators, and you are able to assess whether or not you meet those indicators or how well you meet those indicators. Okay, so let's talk about the IIBA competency model. It really boils down to 3 components: knowledge areas, techniques, and underlying competencies. The knowledge areas talk about the tasks and the knowledge specific to things that a BA would perform. The techniques talk about how you'd actually perform those tasks and think about how you'd actually deliver on those outputs. But what I find to be key is the underlying competencies, because they will tell you how successful you're going to be in practicing the knowledge areas, in implementing with those techniques, because it's all about the way you execute them. And this is a critical component of the competency model. Other things to know. So when I talk about the competency model today, I'm talking about the one that we have available to our community today, and that is the one that's based on BABOK version 2. We are well on the way for working to update the competency model to version 3, but I just want to make sure that everyone is clear that the language that I may use today is reflective of what we have available for the competency model. But what is key, regardless of version, is that it's the knowledge areas, the techniques, and the underlying competencies, that when you perform them together, they will be a performance competency in which you, as a business analyst, can assess yourself on whether or not you perform the job effectively. Okay, so I apologize for all the colors here, but really this is just a picture just to kind of demonstrate why the competency model is important. And I have this little person at the bottom here who is a junior practitioner and really wants to take their practice to the next level. And by next level, I would mean that they want to go into another career level. They want to move into an intermediate BA. So a model is important because for that junior BA, the model is going to tell them the performance competencies that they require in order to move into the intermediate BA level. Not only will it tell the performance competencies, but it would say or tell what the level of proficiency will be for them to be considered an intermediate BA. So as a person who's thinking about growing my career, I'm really excited about that because I have a map that tells me, okay, these are the performance competencies that are reflective of the career that I want or the level that I want. I just now have to figure out how to get there. So what about the person who is a junior BA, but trying to understand how well their skill set is working? You know, are they working to the best of their ability? Is there anything that they need to do in terms of performance competencies to up their game a little bit? So being able to understand where or the proficiency level for their particular career level will help them understand where they actually need to grow so that they can be a full functioning effective junior BA. And then you'll notice above the BA practitioner, we have career options. Once you're into a new career level, your options open up. You have different options to look at. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the presentation. Okay, the IIBA business analysis competency model. So this is just a quick way of showing you all the individual components that make up the performance competencies. A little more detail than the initial one that I had shared. So if you can see at the foundation, it's the underlying competencies. And again, these are the critical pieces that will determine how well you execute on your tasks and your techniques. So we'll start with, from the left, analytical thinking and problem solving. So when you think of the work that you do as a business analyst, it's really about being effective in terms of identifying business problems, assessing the solutions for the problems, and making sure that you truly understand the needs of stakeholders. So this analytical thinking and problem-solving capability is critical in being able to do the work that we do. Behavioral characteristics. So we are a group of practitioners that do not work in isolation. We have many, many relationships with stakeholders that we have to make sure that we take care of. And in doing that, there are certain qualities that we have to make sure are sound. You know, we have to be ethical. We have to make sure that our stakeholders trust us. And we have to make sure that we are organized in being able to deliver on what we need to deliver, because they do trust us, and they will give us more information, and they trust that we will truly understand the business need, and we will provide solutions that will address their business need. Business knowledge. That really speaks to credibility. You know, the first thing that we need to do is we need to be able to understand those business needs, and we can't understand the business needs if we don't understand the business. So it is critical that we do have that business knowledge, that business acumen to help us with our role. Communication skills. We communicate all the time. We communicate verbally. We communicate with all of our stakeholders when we share requirements, when we try to resolve issues. We communicate in written form, our requirements documents, when we want to be able to provide updates on what's happening, trying to get consensus. So we have to be very, very skilled at communication. Interaction skills. Now that is very, very important, again, because we work with stakeholders, and we don't just work with one stakeholder. We mostly work with a wide variety of stakeholders that have different interests in everything that we do. So we have to make sure that we can work with them to reach decisions that will not stop our progress in an initiative. So it's important that we have facilitation skills, important that we have those negotiation and conflict resolution skills. Software applications. So when you think about software applications, you think about it in terms of, you know, the general software applications that we used for our requirements documents and other elicitation sessions and gathering information, like spreadsheets and Word documents. But there's also software applications that we'll use to help us in our jobs, like business rule engines, requirements management software. So we have to understand, you know, what is appropriate for our needs during any time. Okay, so now let's go and let's have a look at the skills and knowledge that we have with our tasks. So these will be familiar. Again, I have to say that they are reflective of the current competency model. So again, that's based on version 2. So when you see the names for the different knowledge areas, you know that that has not been updated yet, and that is something that is being worked on right now. So when we have business analysis, planning, and monitoring, so really covering how a business analyst determines the activities that they need to be able to do to complete their effort, identifying stakeholders, selecting techniques, and the process that they're going to be using to manage requirements. So we have that particular knowledge area that's addressed in the competency model. And then we also have elicitation. In version 3 of the BABOK, that's now called elicitation and collaboration. But with elicitation, it's really about understanding how we actually are working with stakeholders. So we have to be able to identify and understand their needs and concerns. And we have to ensure that we are actually finding the right needs. So they're not just their actual needs rather than any superficial wants that people may have. So lots of digging that we have to do and lots of techniques that we have to use to really get at the core issue at hand. Requirements management and communication. So in version 3, you'll know it as requirements lifecycle management. So it's really about how we're actually going to communicate the requirements to people, how we're going to actually maintain the requirements, how we're actually going to ensure that we manage any conflicts and prioritize any of the requirements that come our way through our stakeholders. Enterprise analysis in version 3, it's strategy analysis, but it's really about identifying that business need and clarifying the definition of the need and the scope so that we can truly implement something that is feasible for the business. And again, that kind of speaks back to that credibility where you want to make sure that you have that business knowledge and you're not suggesting things that are not inappropriate for a business to implement as a solution. Requirements analysis, that is now requirements analysis and design definition in version 3, but that's more about what we actually do with requirements in terms of ordering requirements, analyzing the stakeholder needs to define solutions, assessing the current state of the business, recommending solutions to improve the business, and verification and validation of the results that ensue. And the last one is solution assessment and evaluation and validation. And when we think about that one, that in version 3, it's solution evaluation. And really that is making sure that the proposed solutions actually fit the business need, identify any gaps, shortcomings, any risks, any kind of workarounds that you need to do, or any changes that you need to do with the solution. So all of the tasks that are related to that knowledge area are also included in the competency model. Okay. So how can the competency model be used? Well, it's interesting. You can look at it from 3 different perspectives. The perspective that is of most interest to all of us is the business analyst use. So how are we going to use it? So really it's used in terms of understanding, what capability looks like for us, our performance competencies, and understanding for our career level what that actually looks like and what we should actually attain in terms of effective performance, and allowing us to assess ourselves against that standard based on those indicators that are included in the competency model to see what our strengths are, what our areas of improvement are, and how can we actually close that gap. Which brings us to training and development. That's how we actually close the gap. What are those training options that are involved that will help us move to the next level with our career? And then career development. So that's where are we going to go? Is career development for me that I'm going to make sure that I truly function as an effective intermediate business analyst? Or is it that I want to see where I'm going to go in the next 3 years, the next 5 years, the next 10 years? How do I move my skill set, or how do I grow my skill set so I can actually grow my career in a different way? BA managers. BA managers are very interested in the competency model because it helps them understand their practitioners' skill gaps. So they know what areas they need to focus on for skill development for the practitioners. Mentoring and coaching BAs, it allows them to understand where they can be of service to help a practitioner understand how to hone their skills. Resource management. We have many, many initiatives in our organizations, and it's not all the time that we need to have a senior BA on that initiative. And sometimes we have, well, lots of the times, we have very complex difficult kinds of initiatives, and it's not something that's appropriate for a junior BA. So what a BA manager is able to do is understand the practitioner's skill level and be able to assign, allocate work based on the capability of that BA. Organizations also love competency models because it helps them in terms of understanding different roles and what they look like. And also in terms of coming up with an organizational training requirement for business, and recruiting people, interviewing people. They get to see what are those performance competencies that are best suited for that junior BA, that intermediate BA, that senior BA, and devise questions that they can ask to see if that person, that candidate that they are interviewing is aware of the performance competency and is suitable in terms of the performance competency, has that capability. The other key component, so the tools of the trade. So when we think about a competency model, there are certain things that we have to be aware of that we need in order to drive it. And the first thing that we need, and I've mentioned it as we were going through this, is the idea of career levels. We need to understand, what are the different career levels for the BA job family. So the competency model talks about 4, the entry level, the junior BA, the intermediate BA, and the senior BA. So with the entry BA, this is the person that has had limited or very, very small experience or exposure to business analysis, with the exception of some training that they've had, reading the Babcock Guide. They may have taken some business analysis courses, but no practical experience to speak of. And they're just looking for that step into the market, that they can actually become more like a junior BA, where they're actually practicing their role. So a junior BA might be in their role for a year, year and a half, and they do have a limited practical experience, but it is practical experience, and that is the difference. And they're looking to spend more time to understand the different tasks and techniques of business analysis, and looking for opportunities to practice this, and really heavily dependent on senior resources to help them and guide them. Then we have the intermediate BA, and that's one that has been practicing for several years. So if you want to think about it in terms of the kind of designation that would be equivalent to, it would be something like today's CCBA. And this is a person who has worked independently in some maybe smaller projects, and even some complex projects, but does look to senior people to help them a little bit in terms of the work that they do. And then we have the senior BA, and this is the one that is a seasoned practitioner, lots of experience, lots of different situations, able to perform to the standard every time, works independently, looked at as a mentor, has deep, deep working knowledge of business analysis practice. The next important thing to talk about, skill development levels. So that's where you see how you can grow your actual competencies. So what it looks like when you're a level 1 development area to a level 5 development area. And we start off as a novice for level 1, and that is similar to that entry level where you have a textbook understanding of the BA role. Going into an advanced beginner, so you have some practical experience, but you do need some supervision. And sliding into competent, where you do have some working experience, you're able to work without supervision, you can resolve complex issues, but you do have someone that you can go to whenever you need to have advice. Being proficient, you have in-depth knowledge of areas of practice, and you do deliver high quality information when asked. An expert is when you have that deep experience in many, many varieties of complex contexts and situations, and you are considered the authority, the leader, and the mentor for everyone within the practice. And then, of course, we have our performance competencies, the key being the behavioral indicators, and the idea that it's the knowledge areas, the techniques, and the underlying competencies that see us through for those performance competencies. Okay, so we're talking about what's in it for the business analyst, so the self-assessment. I'm not sure how many of you have actually done the BA competency model self-assessment, and generally if I was in the same room with you, I would ask for a raise of hands. But really this is just a picture of what it looks like, and you can go on the website, the IIBA website, to get more information about the self-assessment. But really what it's done, or what happens with this assessment, is that it outlines all of the performance competencies and all of the indicators. And you are asked to go in and you are asked to rate yourself based on your ability to model those behaviors that are set up. So instead of using novice, advanced, beginner, competent, proficient, and expert as skills development, what has been designed in this tool is to use words such as I do not have the experience as being level 1, I have some experience level 2, I perform this competency and indicators independently as level 3, I consistently perform as level 4, I consistently perform and looked as a mentor as level 5. So you would go through and you would look at each of the different knowledge areas and all of the indicators, be able to indicate how you actually perform in comparison to the performance indicators. So what does this do for you? So I did a mock-up a possible way that you can actually look at it, just to try to explain its actual use to move you forward. So let's pretend that you've done a self-assessment for each of the different knowledge areas. And you'll see that there are two colors for the bar. The gray is the expected, so expected for your particular career level. And the red is actual, your actual self-assessment score. So let's say that this particular level, career level that's represented here, is the intermediate role. So when I look at business analysis, planning, and monitoring, I see that the expected level of performance is having a working knowledge of BA practice and can perform most tasks without supervision. But I see my score is slightly higher, and I think, okay, I probably want to continue working on this particular knowledge area and honing my skills there, but it's not something that I really, really need to be concerned about, because for my career level, this is working really, really well. I then go to elicitation, and I see that the expected is at a 4 to being proficient at it. But when I look at my scores, I see that I'm well past that. So this is an area that I excel at. And this is something that I've really done a really good job in terms of elicitation. So it's something that's really, as an intermediate business analyst, it's something that I'm really, really good at. But then I look at the other ones. I look at requirements management, I look at enterprise analysis, requirements analysis, solution assessment, and validation. And I see that the expected is higher than the actual. And I'm most concerned with the enterprise analysis, because there is a pretty big gap here between the expected and the actual. So when I'm thinking about what am I going to do with this, I need to consider how large the gap is and how I want to move my career forward. Do I want to be able to move into the next category of career level, into a senior BA? Or if I'm a junior BA and these are my scores, what do I need to focus on to become an intermediate BA? So I have to start thinking in terms of using my business analysis skills on me to think about, what do these results mean? And where do I need to focus? How do I need to grow my skill set? And that's where you're going to go when you're going to develop an action plan. So you're going to do what I just did and reflected on the business analysis competencies. I saw my self-assessment, looked at the scores, and thinking about where I want to go. And you're going to develop a plan that is going to attend to how you're actually going to close that gap. You're going to understand more about those knowledge areas, especially the ones that you were not clear or you didn't perform as well as expected on. And, I can consult other resources like the online library, because there are lots of books that I can consult in terms of getting more information about those knowledge areas as well. You can also discuss your strength and development areas with your manager. Your manager is the one that's going to help you, or it can provide you with some alternate means for developing in the areas that you think that you need to develop. And talking to your colleagues about your areas and your development areas and your competencies is really, really good as well, because you can help each other. You might have a colleague who is really great in enterprise analysis where you didn't do as well in that particular knowledge area, and you can work together. Perhaps you can job shadow, perhaps you can get some coaching from them, perhaps you can look at some of their artifacts and get some ideas about how you can actually improve. Find out what they did in order to hone that skill. So I talked a little bit about closing the gap, because that's what you want to do next. You want to think about all of the opportunities that you have to close those gaps. So when I think about the opportunities offhand, I've just thrown a few on the slide, but you can look at the EEP trainers that we have on our website in terms of formal courses and programs that might be interest to you, or might be concentrating on the skill set that you need to develop. Certification, that's a great way of actually closing in on those skills and understanding things a little bit more and being able to practice those in your workplace once you understand or have a deeper understanding of those areas. Coaching and mentoring. Coaching, look for someone who does really, really well in a knowledge area that you're not as strong in, and follow them, get some advice from them, or mentoring. Find someone who is either in the career level that you aspire to or the role that you aspire to, and again, find out what they've done, find out their steps, emulate them, figure out how you're actually going to grow your skill set through that. There are always conferences and tutorials that are offered in various areas, such as BBC. Webinars, IIBA has a lot of webinars. I took the opportunity, I came on to look at all the webinars that you have offered for the rest of the year, and you've got so many opportunities to learn more about different tasks, different techniques. I think that's wonderful, so take advantage of those. Job aids, BA literature, so online library, anything that you can find. We also have videos in the online library. If it's something about leadership that you're looking for and you need to hone your skill set in terms of that, have a look at those videos. One thing that I really like, and I don't know if many people do this, is going on the IIBA Career Center and getting a sense, when you look at the listing of jobs, may not be the exact title that you're looking for, definitely may not be in your geographical area, but get a sense of what people are looking for, what skill sets they're looking for, because that will help you understand where you actually need or prioritize where you should be closing your gap. Practice on the job. Work with your BA manager for opportunities to practice that skill set that you want to improve. Volunteering. Volunteering is the best thing, and I don't know if people realize how essential volunteering is to growing your skill set. You're able to do things that you normally or you may not be able to do on your job, really able to extend your capabilities, and that is something that's an amazing thing to do. And job shadowing, find someone that's doing everything right, someone that you want to emulate, and see if you can actually attend a presentation session, attend a workshop, read some of the artifacts that they've produced. So I'm going back to this map again, and really what this is doing is, you've got your person who starts here in terms of their career level, and understands the areas that they need to focus on in order to improve, closes the gap by doing those learning opportunities, and is being able to grow, and now is opening new opportunities for themselves. And really, there's lots of information on this in this picture, but really it's opening those opportunities by first identifying the skill gaps, closing those skill gaps, elevating to another level, and being able to open doors to new opportunities. So growing your career. So people start becoming a business analyst in many, many different ways. So generally it's from, from an office setting, you have a job that's not really within the business analysis job family, but you've seen people practice it. You might have been involved because you were a stakeholder, and you think, what? I have those competencies. I want to be able to transition into a BA role, and I want to be able to grow my competencies with that. Or you can get there through the educational route. You can get a degree in information technology, get a business degree, take a foundational certificate or diploma course in business analysis to help you out with that. But what I really want to focus on in terms of career development is getting back to that story about the traveler and the stone cutters, looking about how you can grow. You can grow your career and what you need to really focus on. So when you think about the entry level and that first stone cutter who was just doing, very detailed, doing the job that they were asked to do and placing it down and doing a good job, taking the stone, placing it down, that's the job. But moving and being able to do more, so that second stone cutter who was practicing his skill, so honing his skill and recognized that there are different ways to do it to get the same result, and maybe doing it in a more efficient and better looking way, improving the actual end result, delivering value. And then to the third one, that was building the cathedral, having that big picture thought process and recognizing that tasks are just a means to an end, and the end is the most important. Delivering that value is the most important. So when you're growing your career, understanding where you are in your career level, understanding, what's expected of that career level and how you need to grow, growing in terms of context of work, the level of influence you have in an organization, growing in terms of, using those underlying competencies to execute in better ways, execute with more influence. So really thinking about what that is. And you'll see this diagram in the competency model, and it's one that really, really has always resonated with me because it just shows, the way that you actually work towards creating or building your career. And the size of the bubble is indicating the influence that you have in the organization. Okay, so getting started. So one thing that I want to talk about first before I go through each and every one of these roles is that they are indeed roles. They're not job titles. But for you to understand that there are different roles within the business analysis job family. And when you think about how you practice business analysis and all of the initiatives that are put on your plate, you may be doing all of these. So don't think of it as, I want to be a process analyst. Think about it in terms of, here are some of the things that you would be focusing on in a process analyst focused initiative. Okay, so I'm going to start with business requirements analyst, and really the focus is on requirements here, so helping the business meet its objectives and goals, understanding how work is being conducted, using analysis to determine solutions to issues. So you're focused on requirements there. The next one, I'm going to look at process analyst. So process analyst, it's all about the processes, right? How do you manage any of the changes to processes? How the analysis and design that you do in terms of preparing to implement new business processes, working with stakeholders to ensure that you get consensus and buy-in for moving forward with a process, documenting models. So that is the focus there for a process analyst. Decision analyst. So this person is all about the data. So when you think of business intelligence, business analytics, this person is using data and quantitative analysis, statistical methods, predictive modeling to actually make decisions. And their objective is to be able to come up with really clean solutions faster with less risk, because they do all of the front work in terms of all of the predictive modeling to minimize risk. So that is someone that's focused on the data. So if you're doing a data warehouse project, decision analyst is a role that's very, very key for a business analysis person to play. Business systems analyst. So let's think of this person in terms of the context of business architecture. So really what this one wants to do, the role identifies and develops IT solutions. They ensure the solution is meeting the business need, and they'll trace the requirements through test planning cases, and they'll ensure that non-functional requirements are meeting all the service level agreements. So really they're trying to make sure that the business is working well with IT to make sure that you're able to come up with solutions that make sense for the organization. Functional analysts. So if we think about it in terms of software, they're really all about the product and the features and the functionality, and really trying to make sure that things work the way that they actually need to work. And when I think about if you're looking for a new ERP system or something like that, you want someone with the functional analyst kind of mindset to come in to be able to document what the product feature list it would be for this particular software product, and being able to assess whether or not a solution meets that needs, and making recommendations, doing requests for proposals and things like that. You would need someone of that mind to make sure that you're actually getting software that really meets the needs. An agile analyst. So when I think of agile analyst, it is about that iterative mindset, developing requirements by continually exploring the business need, refining requirements in those iterative processes, defining acceptance criteria, prioritizing, reviewing the results, and really making sure that there's enough information for the development team at the right time and the right level of detail so that the right product can be delivered. And regardless of which role you may fall into or which roles you fall into, in terms of progression, when you think about those bubbles, how do you keep moving forward? Well, it's really about, from getting started, moving into an intermediate space, showing that you can work in that space independently and looking for more complex, larger scale initiatives. You may require some support from senior people to do that, but getting that kind of exposure is what you need to be able to keep moving towards the senior. And when you're at the senior, you can see that you have larger initiatives that are constantly being brought to you. You work independently. You produce high quality work product. You're mentoring people in terms of them being able to assist and being able to support an initiative. So what happens then? So again, remember that bubble that started from the entry to more advanced BA careers. So what happens? What happens to you at the senior level, and where would you want to go? Well, there are a lot of options. When we think about different options, we think about BA leadership roles, and names that come to mind are the BA project lead. So this is a person who specifically manages projects. There's the BA program lead, same kind of thing, but from a program lens. The BA practice lead, all about the process standards and development. Relationship manager, so this is the person that's involved with the stakeholders and IT relations to keep those intact. Manager business analysis, resource management, and we spoke about this earlier in terms of resource management, how important it would be for a manager to understand where you sit in terms of your skill set, where you sit in terms of your career level, so they're able to plan accordingly for all the initiatives that come their way. Enterprise architect, so IT business strategy alignment, and business architecture, more about process improvement. And then there are opportunities too beyond that, getting into directors, VP, and C-level kinds of positions. So I've been speaking a lot about the competency model, about growing your career, about assessing where you are. And I do want you to know that the competency model is something that we have for our BAs to keep them moving forward in terms of their career, to really understand where they are and where they actually need to go. So we do have next steps for our competency model because we want to continue to be able to provide quality product that helps all of the practitioners. So our path forward is that we will be updating to version 3 of the BABOK for the competency model, and we will we are still working through timelines for that, but we will be able to communicate that at a later time. We're going to continue to focus on keeping the competency model accessible, and actionable. And really what that means, accessible, is that we want you to continue to use the competency model, and not just once to find out where you are. It is something that you should be using all throughout your development plan and beyond to understand where you are, where you need to go. And you might be doing a lot of learning initiatives in order to close your gap or other things to close your gap. You need to be able to see that you're making progress and that you're actually moving to the next level. So we want to make sure that it's accessible so you can continually be able to do that. Accessible, speaking to the fact that you can actually assess yourself. So keeping it with as it is with the behavioral indicators so that you understand what good performance looks like and really understand in terms of your level where you need to be with that performance. Excuse me. Actionable. We want it, the purpose of a competency model and doing an assessment is that there is some sort of action, that you actually close any of the gaps that do exist. So we want to make sure that you are in the position to be able to action upon it. And then also start thinking about moving beyond the senior BA practitioner. What's next? You know, what if your career aspiration goes beyond senior BA? What's the path? What's the path look like for you? What are the competencies that you need to be able to develop in order to move forward? So we do know that you need to develop more and more influence within the organization as you move up. So what are those key things that or competencies that you need to hone in order to make sure that that happens? So let's reflect. So we spent a lot of time. I'm just looking at the time. And it's 9. Well, I guess it's 6:50 now, your time. But we have spent time looking at, you know, what could happen with your career aspirations, your career path. How can you think about your career growth in different ways, and how can you understand how to move forward? So I hope that you've been doing some reflection, and when we first started, I was asking the question of you, you know, what does your cathedral look like? You know, is it becoming more competent in your current role so that you are more effective in the way that you actually perform? Is it that you're looking for how to actually grow your career, you know, the next 3 years, the next 5 years? What does that actually look like? Do you have your eye on the prize of some area where you want to be, and thinking about how to actually develop your competencies and your skill set to move forward? So we spent a lot of time talking about the competency model, not only in terms of what it is, but how you can actually use it. We spent some details in terms of the core components of the competency model so you can understand how they all work together. And we started talking about, you know, growing your career. What does that look like for you? Only you can answer what you want to do with that. We can provide some resources for you to help you, but it is, you know, it is your ship to steer, so to speak. So really, you know, there are just 3 things in terms of keys to success for your career. You know, understand where you are, determine where you want to be, and really follow the path for your goal. Be relentless. Follow that path to get where you need to go. So where to start? IIBA has resources. So we have the BABOK guide, the standard for business analysis. We have the competency model. We have the business analysis career roadmap, and you can find that in the career section of the IIBA website. Have a look, get a sense of what that looks like, and all of the resources that are available there. So I'm finished speaking. So I'm going to take this time to look at some of the questions and see if you put any questions in the box. And let's see if I can go in here. So something to note, someone is asking for the PowerPoint presentation. I will be giving the PDF to Kenan, and he will be distributing it to all of the people that that have attended the webinar. Or I'm not sure, Kenan, you might actually place it somewhere where all of your chapter members can read it or see it. So so we will be making sure that you do get a copy. Why version 3 of the competency guide aligns with version 2? Okay, so we are in the process, everything of doing that alignment. We now have version 3 of the BABOK guide. So our focus right now is to update the competency model to reflect the any of the indicators that have been modified through BABOK version 3 in terms of what is expected. Remember when we first started talking in the presentation, I talked about, you know, what business analysis is and the definition of business analysis. And in version 3, we've upped our game in terms of the expectation, you know, enabling and change, identifying needs, delivering value, or recommending solutions that deliver value to stakeholders. So there may be some tweaks that have to be made with the behavioral indicators. The core elements, the purpose, the use of the competency model does not change. You know, we're still all about a performance competency being the techniques, being the knowledge areas, being the underlying competency. How can a BA go on to become a product manager? Well, that's a good question. So really the things that you do need to think about, you have to think about your skill set. So it requires a little bit of work to go through everything that you've done, all of the different skills that you have. And you know what, I would say look at it in terms of the underlying competencies that you do have. So have a look at the competency model, look at the underlying competencies, and get a sense of what kinds of skills can be transferred to the product manager role. The other thing that I would suggest is look at job ads for a product manager. Understand the skill set that they're looking for so that you're able to understand how you can actually match up your skill set to reflect that need. I'm a senior business analyst who comes from an IT background. I have been working as a BA for the past 5 years. My question here is, how do I take CBAP certification? Well, you have to have a certain number of hours for CBAP certification, and I believe it's 7,500 work hours. So when you do your application, you're going to be asked to provide work experience that matches the tasks within the BABAP guide for a business analyst. So what you would have to be able to do is demonstrate that you have 7,500 business analysis work within, I believe it's the past 10 years. You've been working in 5 years in business analysis, but you have to be able to demonstrate that you do have that kind of work experience. So the application is the first step. Once you complete the application, then you do take the exam, and you will, if you pass the exam, you become CBAP certified. Let's see, any other questions? I'm an engineering graduate with no MBA in business analysis. How would I recognize BA with my experience in an IT company? Well, I would, again, look at your underlying competencies. Look at your skill set. Engineering, analytic ability, problem-solving ability, being able to communicate, effectively work with business stakeholders. Look at all of those things that you've done and see how you can actually transfer those skills into what is required within the company that you had mentioned here. Okay, here's one. 12 years experience, an IT prof, not a BA actually, but have done lots of BA work since I have been in IT. I just completed CBAP, but I'm finding it tough to get a BA job. You know, I've had many people say the same thing to me. And one thing that I would wonder if you would consider is volunteering to get that work experience, to practice your skill set. There are lots of options in terms of things that you can do in volunteering, and I wonder if those are available to you, and if you can look through that. And also, transferring your skill set, looking at the competencies that people are actually looking for. Having a CBAP is great. They know that you're certified. But if they're looking for additional work experience, try to look and see what your skill set in your previous role looked like, and what you can bring over into the new role. So have a look and see what happens there. Apart from the hours, what difference does a CCBA and CBAP exam? So really, right now it is the style of questions for a CCBA and a CBAP. A CCBA is more knowledge-based, a CBAP is more situational-based, because you've had many more years as a CBAP to actually practice your skill and really get that deep-seated expertise in the skill. So they would want to see you being able to demonstrate that. Whereas CCBA, there might be some more knowledge-based questions. I think we have time for one more. Oh, I'll answer this one. This is about CBAP as well. I am a CBAP version 2 certified. Do I need to be version 3 certified? Well, I am in the same boat, and no, you don't. So you have to, I'm not quite sure when you're up for recertification. So, and I can't speak directly to what the recertification process is going to be in the next couple of months, but I would suggest that you send an email to certification@iiba.org if you have more questions about certification. But your version 2, you're a CBAP, you will always be a CBAP. So it's similar to when we went from version 1 to version 2 of the BABOK. So please don't worry about that. But please do look into, when you're recertified and what that's going to look like for you. And with that, it's 10 o'clock, and it is time to end the presentation and close up the webinar. But I really do want to thank you, and I wish I could hear you ask those questions instead of just reading the questions. But we still do have a fair number of questions left, so I will work with Kenan to get those responses back to you as soon as we can. And Kenan, I just really want to thank you very much for inviting me to present with your chapter, and I hope that it was useful, and I hope that people have a lot of things that they're going to think about and actually make actionable and really work to grow your career. So thank you very much, and with that, I will close the webinar. Have a good evening.